for religion. The A, I don't know. The S is speech. One of the P's is press. So the freedom of press, the freedom of religion, and the freedom of speech. The other two, A and P, I do not know. Rabs. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Johan, and I'm a typical Dutchman. And I often wonder, why is there such a big gap between Europe and the United States of how they understand each other? Why do American customs and media seem so different and yet so familiar? To explore these questions, I react to American videos from US history to everyday life, and just to find out where these differences are coming from. And if you're curious too, make sure you like and subscribe to see more of my videos. And today I'm going to react to the Bill of Rights, every amendment, why it's important, and how it limits the government. And with the current day troubles, lightly, as an understatement, troubles in the United States, I want to know what it is. I already did the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, but I did not go through the entire Bill of Rights. So I want to know what is in the Bill of Rights to do. Let's switch to the video and react.
Considering the vast differences in culture, religion, and businesses, it's understandable that not everyone in the 13 original states was completely happy with the finished product. The Balancing Act became making enough states satisfied with the Constitution in order to ratify the document, and one of these major compromises was on adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. As you may know, the Federalists were confident the new federal government would not take away the rights of the people because, separation of powers, checks and balances, and the fact that there is nothing in the Constitution that states the government can take rights from the people. You're worrying about nothing. Now the
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how old the video is, but nowadays.
Federalists weren't so sure this was enough. They wanted guaranteed rights, or states like Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, and New Hampshire would not ratify the document. On the other hand, Delaware did not care about guaranteed rights. They ratified the document immediately. Once they pinky promised, the Constitution was ratified and everyone was happy. Except they weren't done. They had to add guaranteed rights for all in a Bill of Rights. And before
it's animated. Okay. The Bill of Rights, to make sure that the anti-federalists were happy too. And now we could be glad that they were anti-federalists because,
Before we go any further, I want to thank Pete Goldman and Pamela Benham for suggesting this video on the Bill of Rights. If you have any suggestions for a civics review video, leave me a comment below. Okie dokie, let's get to the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 changes to the Constitution. And we're going to start with Amendment 1. The First Amendment guarantees 5 rights which almost certainly appear on your end of course test. Off the top of your...
It's about a preparation for a test. Okay. I don't do the test.
Your head, you could probably list some or all of them. Go ahead and try right now.
Yeah, the freedom of speech, the freedom of press. That's it for me. 2 out of 5. Of freedom of religion, number 3.
Did you get them? In order to ensure we remember them all, we use the acronym RAPS, and that's R-A-P-P-S.
RAPS. Okay, I do not know. Let's try. R for religion. The A, I don't know. The S is speech. One of the P's is press. So the freedom of press, the freedom of religion, and the freedom of speech. The other two, A and P, I do not know. Rabs.
Acronyms are super helpful for remembering what these letters stand for. Observe. The acronym NASA stands for National Astronauts Space.
Agency.
It didn't work.
Oh, come on, agency.
Not
Administration.
even close.
Okay.
I've tried every available combination of letters to spell something cooler than raps, but it doesn't exist. Prasp? No, see, it doesn't work. Anyways, RAPPS stands for Religion, Assembly, Petition, Press, and Speech.
Assembly. Yeah, okay. The right to assemble, of course. In Europe, we have the same, but yeah, okay. The right to protest, the right to sign or to make a petition against. Yes, okay. Religion, assemble, petition, press, and speech. Okay. But we do not have the freedom of speech in Europe. We have this freedom of expression, and that's something different.
Now, when we say religion, we're talking about two things. The government will not establish any religion, meaning you can't have a religion forced upon you by law. And secondly, you are free to have any religion or no religion. Assembly refers to our right to gather in groups, usually to protest, and sometimes we assemble together in a flash mob, because we just want to dance. Petition gives us the right to appeal or complain to the government. Press refers to media of any form, newspapers, news channels, social media, and it gives us the right to report on stories and news that's happening. And of course we have the freedom of speech, meaning we have the right to our opinions and to express ourselves whether people agree with us or not. Disclaimer: these rights and freedoms are not unlimited. An excellent rule of thumb is, if you're breaking a law, if you're doing something that will endanger others, you may not have the right to do these things. So let's take a closer look at
To endanger someone else, other. Yeah, in Europe we talk about if you hurt somebody's feelings, if you so more or less, then you are in the wrong.
limitations to our rights by going over the freedom to assemble, which is found in the First Amendment. This guarantees our right to assemble in groups in a public place. When thinking about somewhere private, like, say, your room, it is no longer acceptable to say, I have the right to assemble with my friends inside of your home. This is trespassing, and trespassing is a crime.
What? If you want to assemble together with your friends, it's trespassing? What?
My friends inside of your home.
Again.
Public place. When thinking about somewhere private, like, say, your room, it is no longer acceptable to say, I have the right to assemble with my friends inside of your home. This is trespassing, and
Okay. Strange. It's
trespassing is a crime. For a full explanation of why you have limitations to your constitutional rights,
I can't assemble with. If I need to prepare something like, I don't know, a petition, or I can do this in a. I don't think this is correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound right.
you can click here and check this video out. Now, in 1791, as they are writing the Bill of Rights, the Revolutionary War is fresh in the back of everyone's brain. And under British rule, the colonists lost many rights and wanted to make sure that they'd never lose them again. So after the American Dance Revolution, which by the way, we won with our mad skills, it was time to make sure a government would never attempt to take away these rights from the people. So the first few amendments in the Bill of Rights are responses to British rule in the past. So the Second Amendment guarantees us the right to bear arms. And this of course means to own a firearm or gun. Right? I knew you knew what that meant, and probably not the other thing that you might have been thinking of. Now this is...
Yeah, again, I saw the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms is what it's nowadays. I believe those days it was the right to have an armed militia as the Second Amendment part, and it's evolved in the last decades into the right to bear arms.
This is a pretty big deal because the British tried to take the colonists' weapons away, most notably in the raids at Lexington and Concord. While this can be a contentious issue in today's time, right? Do we have the right to own a gun, or should we have the right to own some kind of firearm? The Supreme Court has been pretty clear on its interpretation of the Second Amendment. The people do have the right to bear arms. The Third Amendment is the odd one out. It reads, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner." To the modern citizen, it is the most be quartered.
No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
In any house without the consent of the owner. To the modern citizen, it is the most useless of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. I mean, really, how often does a soldier come knocking on your door saying, "I need a place to stay, please let me in"? This doesn't
I'm thinking if we in Europe or in the Netherlands have such a law in our constitution, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
really happen, but back in the time of the colonies, where we were under British rule, this was a law. We had to allow soldiers into our house, feed them, and give them a place to stay. The next
Yeah, because they came over from England. A couple of 20, 30,000 soldiers came over to the colonies. And in the colonies, there was not enough room, not enough housing in the barracks, etc. Yeah, okay. That's a leftover of the 13 colonies.
couple of amendments are called the rights of the accused, and those include Amendments 4, 5, 6, and 8. Amendment 4 prohibits unreasonable search and seizures, and you're going to need to know this term for your test. Seizure, of course, referring to the action to seize, which means to take or repossess. And so basically, the police cannot go through your stuff or your house unless they have a warrant to do so.
And it's a special warrant, as I gather. But,
So
okay.
it is issued by a judge, or if they have probable cause. The Fifth Amendment has a lot of goodies.
Probable cause. That's a vague. I saw a lot of videos about it. It's mostly what the cops use to do a seize, to search and seize a house.
For those accused of a crime, and it's going to establish the due process of law. So if you are being accused by someone for some kind of crime that might put you behind bars, we are owed the fairness of law, and that's known as due process. This includes a number of things, and first on the docket is the right to a grand jury in a federal crime. Meaning if someone's going to put you behind bars, they better make sure that they're doing things the right way by having an impartial jury of your peers listen to your story and make sure you're really guilty of the crime. Another right of the accused given in the Fifth Amendment is what we call double jeopardy, and this is the right to not be tried for the same crime twice. This one's a little confusing, but if a courtroom finds that you are innocent of a crime, they can't come back and say, "We're going to have a second trial because we found more information and we're going to try and make sure you're guilty this time." They can't do it a third time, and so on and so forth. And this is confusing for students because they say, "Okay, great, if I'm innocent of stealing, now I can steal whatever I want because..."
Okay, yeah. I get it, yeah. For students, confusing. Yeah, I hope for adults, no longer.
As I have the right of double jeopardy. Well, that's not quite how it works. If you are found innocent of a crime on a particular date in a particular event, then you cannot be tried for that same crime. But if you steal something the next day, well then you can be tried for that crime, because it is a separate instance. Another right in the Fifth Amendment is your right to remain silent. These are included in your Miranda rights. You have the right to not testify against yourself. it's up to the prosecution, who has the burden of proof, to find evidence that proves you are guilty of the crime. The final right in Amendment 5 is called eminent domain, and this means if the government needs to take your property or your things, then they must compensate you for it fairly. So if the government needs to
Oh, it's called eminent domain. Okay. So you're being compensated for. Okay.
take your home or the land that your home is on, then they need to give you more than $10 for that land and home. They have to give you a fair value. And this might surprise a bunch of you. You did not know that the government could take your stuff and give you money for it, but they can, especially if they need it for some kind of greater.
That's what I'm thinking about. What if they do a project? They Yeah, but still, there are many more laws. I cannot imagine that somebody's getting evicted from a house. Uh, Here you have 100,000. Move on. We need your house. I don't think that would be that easy to do.
Public good, like building a road through a property you own or a bridge or some kind of infrastructure. Moving on, we have Amendment 6, which gives you a couple of things if you're accused of a crime, and the first is a speedy and public trial. Remember, if someone's accusing you of a crime, you're innocent until proven guilty. But if you are arrested on January of 2022 and your trial is set for December 2025, this is considered to be too long to defend your good name. And while you're defending your good name, you need to have a public trial, meaning people can be there and see what's happening and know there's nothing corrupt going on, like you paying off the judge or the prosecution not presenting any kind of evidence and still being called guilty for the crime. You also have the right under the Sixth Amendment to an impartial jury, and that's a word that we're going to need to know. Impartial means fair and balanced, not leaning towards any side. Now, the jury is the group that's going to determine your innocence or guilt by listening to the facts and the story, and it would be very unfair if the people that were judging you were your buddy or your classmate or your best friend. On the other hand, it would be equally unfair if the jury was full of people like your ex-boyfriend, your angry neighbor, or that one science teacher that just really did not like you. What's up with
This is really, well, I guess high school, not primary school, I guess.
science teachers anyways? Now, it is your Sixth Amendment rights that allows you to know what are you accusing me of and who exactly is accusing me. The people who are accusing you cannot be anonymous. They must appear before you so you can see them and see their face and say, aha, it was you. Finally, the Sixth Amendment gives us the right to legal defense even if we cannot afford a lawyer. So if you're incredibly poor, you are going to be given an attorney with amazing anime hair, and they're going to defend you in a court of law and do a goofy dance after they win. Okay, so the Eighth Amendment
4, 5, and 6. But 6 is more or less a get together from everything else you need to get fair treatment. 4 is more about search and seizure, how to get evidence. 5 is more about how to protect yourself, and the rest is all gathered into 6. I wonder what's 8.
is the right to not be cruel and unusually punished. Now, obviously, all of the old forms of punishment that involve public humiliation fall into cruel and unusual punishment, but it includes other things, like excessive fines and excessive bail. Any form of torture violates the Eighth Amendment because that is incredibly cruel. And of course, the punishment must fit the crime. If you steal fruit stripe gum, which I don't even know why you would bother with, you're not going to get 30 years in prison for that crime. That would be
Yeah. Okay. Not 30 years of prison. But sometimes I hear and I see judges making, or I hear news messages that somebody, I'm thinking, what? Life or 25 to life? And then I think, why? Sometimes it's really not fitting the crime, but
excessive and cruel and unusual. And now we're going to go back a ways to the Seventh Amendment, which does not really fall under the rights of the accused. You see, we're not talking about criminal law where you're stealing something or you could be guilty and go to jail. We're talking about civil law, which is just generally disagreements between people. Like when the tattoo parlor messes up your tattoo. This is not a crime, but you might want to sue them over this disagreement. So the Seventh Amendment guarantees a trial by jury in a civil lawsuit. sued so that you and the tattoo parlor can go to court and have a jury of your peers listen to your horrific tale. Now, the Ninth Amendment seems tricky, but it's not. It reads, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage."
Wow, my English is not that good. What? The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Others retained by the people. Confusing, but essentially it means just because some rights are written down does not mean other rights that aren't written down can be denied. For instance,
Okay, the non-written laws. Okay.
There's nothing in the Bill of Rights that says you have the right to wear tall socks or do bad cosplay. But just because it's not written down doesn't mean that these rights can be denied. Unless Congress writes a new law that specifically states you cannot do something, we should assume we have the rights to do things even though they're not specifically listed in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, but that's something else. That's the ninth, the freedom to be free, to do whatever you want as long as in the limits of the law.
10th and final amendment in the Bill of Rights states, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." Basically meaning, if it's not in the U.S. Constitution that the federal government should be doing this thing, then it's saved for the states. They can handle it however they want. Things like education are left up to the states. The federal government makes no mention of education within the Constitution. They say, hey man, we're going to leave that to you, Florida. It's up to you. Same thing goes for the driver's license. That's why every state has a different driving age or different requirements for operating a motor vehicle. It's because the federal government does not want to do this. And so they leave it up to the states. That's the 10th Amendment.
Yeah, but that's also very confusing. Yeah, some of these things should be done by the government in law. That's it. This is how we're going to do it all the way. Every state do this.
We can tell the government we have the right to privacy. You cannot search and seize my home without a warrant. Then it reduces the power of the government and it gives power to the people. Same thing with getting a lawyer or having a speedy trial. We're putting the government on the clock and telling them, hey, you don't have unlimited power. We have rights. And that's a very cool thing. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks so much for sticking to the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. We'll make more videos soon.
Yeah. Okay. Not exactly what I expected from the video, but yeah, good. Some things I wondered about, and that's, well, I'm still learning how some of these rights are, formed. And I know there are many more, so there's only the 10 in the Bill of Rights based on, I was thinking about every time myself, and we have the 13 colonies and the 13 states. How is this amendment formed? So that I could relate to. But for nowadays, I think some, not all, but some laws that are in the states should be regulated by law by the government. But I guess that will be in all the other amendments that are in the laws. And something else I heard in a last video, that there is an expiration date on a law. That's surprised me too. But thus far, interesting video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned along with me. And let's go on to the next video. See you there.